The 2025 schedule has now been released, and the Chargers' success this season will likely come down to how they fared during a brutal 5-game stretch at the end of the year.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, especially late night live shows like this one, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. The schedule release has happened, and of course, when you're a Chargers fan, it means a little bit more because of how well their social media team does. But the first thing that stood out, David, is a brutal 5-game stretch to end their season. So we have to talk about that and the easiest stretch, but we'll also get into them having 5 primetime games this year with storylines for each one of them after only having 3 last season when the schedule came out. And of course, once again, the Chargers social team crushes it. A Minecraft video this year, backing up the Sims video they did last year, and of course, it's loaded with Easter eggs that we'll have to get into. But David, we always get into the toughest 5 games, or toughest 4 games, and easiest 4 games usually, but when we looked at this schedule, it was really the last 5 games that stood out. 4 out of the 5 teams will be playoff teams from 2024, and this is how it's going to go. Week 14 versus the Super Bowl champion Eagles. Week 15 versus the Chiefs, so you get both teams in the Super Bowl back-to-back weeks, which is great. Then you have the Cowboys in Week 16, who should be better with Dak Prescott. Week 17 against the Texans, who obviously smoked you in the playoffs. And then you end your season with the Broncos. So it's hard not to start there, David, on the things that stood out in this schedule release.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really tough ending to the season. So they're going to have to really show up and play some of their best football to close out this really late stretch here. I mean, again, going up against the Super Bowl champions with that loaded roster, and that's going to be a big-time matchup. Thankfully, that's on Monday Night Football, and so I'm very excited for that one. One key kind of thing I want to point out here that is definitely not in the Chargers' benefit is playing at Kansas City and at Denver towards the end of the season, which, what does that mean? Probably really bad weather that they're going to have to contend with, and both of those stadiums are open air, so if it's snowing, it's gonna get ugly. Hopefully, with their revamped running game, they'll actually be able to thrive in those type of environments like we thought they were going to be able to do last year.
And this is all kind of going towards the Jim Harbaugh philosophies and mottos where you want to be a tough team. You want to be a team that can win in December and January. And these are the games that are going to test that. And in my mind, this is the 5-game stretch that will determine the Chargers season in a couple of different ways. Because I think, first of all, it's just you're going to play 4 out of 5 playoff teams at that point. And you only had 2 wins against the playoff teams in 2024, and both of those were against the Broncos last year. So to have 4 out of those 5 teams and the other one getting their quarterback back adds up 5-game stretch at the end of the season. I mean, what's the record you have to go into that with to feel really good about it? And even if you can get up, to a record that, let's say, okay, you need 8-4 at that point, right? Somewhere around there. And then you have that for the final 5 games of the year. If you back into the playoffs after going, 2-3 during that stretch, I just think it also shows you that this team isn't actually ready to win in the playoffs, because that's what it's going to come down to. Nobody cares really about what you do in the regular season outside of you better make the playoffs. And in year 2 of Jim Harbaugh's tenure, you probably should at least be contending for the division. You should be right there with big games at the end of the season. That should be very important. But the other thing is if you can't beat teams like the Eagles or the Chiefs or the Cowboys or the Texans or the Broncos, like if you go 3-2 during that stretch, I think it'll give you a good chance of saying, hey, we can win a playoff game. We're playing playoff teams and we're beating them. Now, we talk about this every year. The 5 toughest games right now might not seem like the 5 toughest games once we get to week 14, and we'll know a lot more about those teams at that point. But what I would say is, man, you are going to be tested, and your ability to win games in the playoffs, this is, I think, where we're going to find out. But I also have to get into the easiest 4-game stretch, because There's a couple that you could go with. I mean, we went back and forth at least between a couple, but this is the one we came down with at the end of it. Week 9 at the Titans, Week 10 Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, they still don't have a quarterback. It's probably going to be Aaron Rodgers, but even Aaron Rodgers doesn't scare you, I mean, that much, I would say. But then you also have the Titans, or you also have the Jaguars, and then the Raiders in Week 13. So that, to me, David, was the 4-game stretch where it's like, this is a much tougher schedule overall. There's not going to be a ton of, real long streaks of you not having to play a good team. But if you could find one, this feels like it would be it.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you look at the Tennessee Titans having a brand new quarterback that they're trying to bring into the NFL after going 3-14 and just being god awful. Just being really, really bad last year. So who knows what that's going to look like. More often than not, these rookie quarterbacks, it takes some time for them to be able to get acclimated to the NFL game. Very rarely do they hit the ground running and are competitive and are able to, really, dice up the entire field. A lot of it's half reads. A lot of it's trying to, get them to manage the game and get through it. And hey, Cam Ward is a very talented quarterback, but I still think that's going to be a really tough game for him. Then you go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, another kind of a rebuilding team, a team that was 4-13 last year. They have their quarterback. They have a new coach. They have a new general manager. A lot of newness there. I think it's going to take some time for them to kind of figure things out. I don't think it's going to be this year. And then the Raiders, again, a lot of new here. New head coach, new quarterback, new running back. They should have some good pieces on offense. They should be a little bit more competent, but it is the Raiders we're talking about here at the end of the day. And I still feel like on the defensive side for them, there's still a lot of question marks that need to be answered. And I think that's a team that still can be vulnerable and be taken advantage of.
And let's be honest, it's a team that you should be beating, right?
Absolutely.
That's really the bottom line of it. Even with Pete Carrol there now, right? Even with Geno Smith in the building now, even with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers, it's still a team that's not fully there yet. And I think with Pete Carrol, even though I do expect him to make them competent, which is pretty annoying, I don't know how long that's going to take. And I think if you're looking at a Chargers schedule that, has more playoff teams on it than doesn't, this is going to be the easiest 4-game stretch for the Chargers. And I think you just really, with what is there at the end of it, you have to play really well during this, right? Yeah. I mean, the Cam Ward could be great. That's not a team that's ready to make a huge leap, it doesn't seem like. Now, you probably would have said that about the Commanders too, and I think the Jaguars and Raiders could be better this year, but also the Jaguars are bad even when Trevor Lawrence wasn't hurt last season. But I do think that this is, you have to crush it during this stretch. You also have a bye week in Week 12 during this stretch, so you have extra time to go up against the Raiders. We'll talk about just how nice it is for the Chargers to have an earlier or a later bye week after some really early ones over the last couple of seasons. But another really important thing that stood out, David, was the fact that the Chargers are going to be starting their season with 3 games in the AFC West. And that, when you're talking about kind of where things will stack up at the end of the year and how important divisional games are, the race for the AFC West this year is going to be starting early.
It really is. I mean, you're talking about, this is the first time since 1988 that the Chargers have started the season with 3 straight consecutive division contests, which is wild. I mean, you think about this, this is half of their division games to start the season. So these division games are super important. To me, they're worth 2, right? So I think in this stretch, to feel good about things, you have to at least get through that first 3 games at 2-1. I think that's where it has to be. You could really get behind the 8 ball if you do not take care of your business early, and you're really going to have to make up ground in the middle of your season before you hit that really tough stretch at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I just think that in the AFC West, if you're trying to, really have this be the season where you're going to take a legitimate shot at the Chiefs inside your own division, it starts right there, and it starts really early, and you're going to have to, find a way to get out of that stretch 2-1 to realistically feel like you have a good chance at the division, because the season's not going to get easier the longer you go. And the other part of that is the first 2 of those games, the whole world's going to be watching, because you have 2 primetime games to kick your season off back to back. You have the second game of the season on a Thursday or a Friday night in Brazil, and then you have a Monday night football game the next week. So a little extra rest after a long travel trip to Brazil when you get the Raiders on Monday night football. But in total, the Chargers got 5 primetime games, and all of them are loaded with storylines. It's very easy to see why the NFL went the direction that they did. So we're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because the NBA playoffs are in full swing and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now because not only are there the NBA playoffs, but the NHL playoffs are raging, and the only thing that's better than both of these playoffs is being able to have action on the games, especially when it's not football season. But FanDuel makes it super easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Another great thing about FanDuel specifically is the fact that they give you all the trends, they give you the analytics to help you make the most informed bets. But the NBA has been wild and there's some more games kicking off. If you think that the Knicks are going to finish things off against the Celtics, even without Jason Tatum after they just got blown out, you guys can get in on that action. And also you have the Nuggets and the OKC Thunder in what has been a barn-burning series. But if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, we talked about the hardest 4-game stretch, or the hardest 5-game stretch, as it were, and also the easiest 4-game stretch. But the one thing we didn't talk about are which of those games are in prime time. And it was really interesting because I thought there'd be more last year just with the return of Jim Harbaugh, even coming off of a 5-win season. But I think that tells you kind of how much they underestimated how good the Chargers could get and how quickly they could get that good. But after an 11-win season, the Chargers were rewarded with 5 primetime games, up from 3 in 2024. The only one I guess I would have loved to see on this would probably been the Commanders, just because Jaden Daniels versus Justin Herbert does something for me specifically.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I think that'd be a hell of a matchup. But this is how it turned out. Week 1 versus the Chiefs. Week 2, Monday Night Football. The rivalry reignited. Pete Carrol versus Jim Harbaugh. It's one of the ones we talked about and which ones we thought would be primetime. Then you get Week 8 versus the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. Week 10 versus the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. And Week 14 against the Super Bowl champions on Monday Night Football. Dave, there's a lot to break down there, and all of these have big storylines attached to them, including Week 1, right? We talked a little bit about it, but the Chargers in Brazil on a Friday night, the second game of the season, and a huge chance to have a statement game to crack your year off.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the Chargers are going to be traveling more than any other team in the NFL. And 12,000 of those miles is going to be coming from 12,000 plus is going to be coming from week 1, going to and from Brazil. That's a really, really long flight. Thankfully, they should have some time, all the time they want, to be able to get there early to acclimate. But yeah, this is it. This is the entire world watching the Chargers versus the Chiefs, and no other football games are going to be on. This is the only ticket in town. And I understand it completely. You got Justin Herbert, you got, Jim Harbaugh, you got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chargers and Chiefs always play each other close. Yeah. There really isn't any blowouts in recent memory in this series. Like, it's really hard-nosed football. And, hey, I like the Chargers' chances here. As long as they're healthy, they go into this game. I like the fact. Yeah, I like it, man. With the way that they're building and the depth they have and all of the weapons they have on offense, I feel a lot better about their prospects. And, of course, you want to get a new season started off with a bang, it's about beating the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, it is. It starts there. And also, if you beat them, you get a much better feeling 12-hour flight home, right? Or however many hours it's going to take to get home. And also, they play the Eagles the next week after that. So if you beat them, send them to 0-1, and then they potentially go 0-2 against the Eagles. The season couldn't start off much better than that. Then you get week 2 at the Raiders, Monday Night Football. Rivalry reignited, the first matchup between Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carrol since December 14th, 2014. And that's too long. And one of my favorite things, because this is a clash that's gone back not only to their Seahawks and 49ers game, but also to when they were at Stanford, Jim Harbaugh was, and Pete Carrol was at USC. And in one of those games, Jim Harbaugh was blowing out Pete Carrol and went for 2 at the end of the game while already up like 30 plus. And he was asked why he did it. And he said, because I couldn't go for 3, which is the most disrespectful thing. But one of the best coaching rivalries in recent memory. This is one that definitely stands out. One we talked about where I was like, hey, it feels like they're going to want to get those two together. You could get, you also have the handshake game where, Jim Harbaugh's aggressively doing it and Pete Carroll's yelling at him because of how the game went. There's just so much there that I'm excited for that duo to be back on TV. But then you also have week 8 against the Vikings. He's going to go up against Jim Harbaugh, that is, his former rival, and also his former quarterback, JJ McCarthy, week 8 on Thursday Night Football.
The NFL is always looking for storylines. They're always looking for compelling matchups. And sometimes some of these things are fabricated and put together for the whole idea of entertainment.
Sure.
This one is not. This is real. There is true, genuine disdain for both of these gentlemen. I can assure you, Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carrol do not like each other. I don't think they ever will like each other. There's just a moment in time when you meet people, you just know you're not going to like them. It just happens in life. And these two gentlemen do not like each other at all. And that definitely makes for appointment popcorn television. I can't wait for it. And obviously it's always FTR around here. No question about it. And then going against the Vikings here with JJ McCarthy, the pupil now takes on the master, and we'll have to see what he looks like. Obviously JJ McCarthy looking like he started off, his season in a pretty good way, and then, lost it before it even really began. So
yeah, never played.
We'll see what it looks like this year when he gets back on the football field. Obviously, the Vikings were great in the regular season last year. And we know Kevin O'Connell is a heck of a football coach. So that is definitely a big storyline matchup. I'm excited to see what that one looks like. The last time the Chargers played the Vikings, it was a pretty good game for Mr. Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think 40 for 48 in that game, over 400 yards. That was a nuts game. Also, will the Vikings still be 14-3 good in the first year of JJ McCarthy? You're not getting him super early as far as getting a rookie and wanting to kind of see him early in the season. The book will be out a little bit on him, which also, has a factor as well in the positive for the Chargers. But also, you get him on a short week, the first short week of his career, trying to get ready and prepare for a game, unless they have a bye before that. But yeah, it could be a short week for the Vikings. But also week 10 versus the Steelers, Sunday Night Football. These games are always just fireworks. Get it on the schedule. You brought this one up, David, when we were talking about which ones could be prime time.
Oh, yeah. I just had a really good feeling because when these two teams get together, the craziest things happen. Whether it's Justin Herbert getting stepped on, or whether it's the Steelers having to kick, 4 or 5, or the Chargers having to kick 4 or 5 field goal attempts because the Steelers would perpetually go offsides over and over again and almost lost the game for repeated penalties until they actually had to let the Chargers finish the game with the field goal. It's fireworks. It's going to be quirky. It's going to be weird. Something crazy is going to happen that you've never seen happen on a football field whenever the Chargers and Steelers get together. So it's just kind of like a prerequisite. It has to be in prime time.
Yeah, and kind of like we talked about before with the Chiefs, always close games. Last year 20-10 was kind of the outlier in that, the game that Justin Herbert obviously got hurt and couldn't finish the game. The other funny thing is the last 7 games in this series have alternated back and forth, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Chargers are coming off a loss. That means it's due for a win this time around. But yeah, it goes back. Even the Le'Veon Bell Wildcat walk-off touchdown with Duck Hodges as the quarterback, I believe in that. They're just... But yeah,
you didn't have to bring that up, Daniel.
Cam Hayward punching Justin Herbert when he went for 472 yards in that game in prime time. So many great matchups. And then week 14, you get the Eagles on Monday Night Football, David. And this represents to me the biggest statement game of the season in primetime on Monday Night Football. If you want to show teams that you're really about it this year, go beat that team who hasn't lost in a very, very long time. And I don't expect them to get much worse.
That's the barometer right there. That's the measuring stick. That's where you need to find out where you're at. This is where you test your mettle against the world champions, against the best team that's in the land right now. So, and that's where the Chargers want to be, right? We know last year the one kryptonite the Chargers had, well, the one of many, is that they couldn't beat a good football team. They just could not beat a good football team. And so this year, if you want to take that next step, it's not about just beating the teams you should beat. It's about beating the good football teams. And obviously with this one, we're talking about the best team in the NFL.
And like we talked about in the first segment, you're going to have the Eagles and then the Chiefs in Arrowhead the next week. So I want to talk about kind of changing people's minds about you and how well you could potentially do in the playoffs. That's where it starts right there. 2 legitimate teams, the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl. But I think the Eagles specifically having an insane offensive line and also an insane interior pass rush. That is, you're talking about kryptonites for the Chargers. All of those things, if you're trying to exercise demons and you want to have trust in those units, that's a game that you can figure it out with your pass rush and also how you're protecting Justin Herbert on the interior. But also, David, quickly, a late bye week as well in 2025, which after a couple of week 5 buys, I think this is a nice thing. I think the players would tell you normally they like the bye week later in the season, and the Chargers get that this year.
Finally, my goodness, the NFL schedule maker had a personal bias against the Chargers for whatever reason, giving them a bye week around week 5. The last couple of seasons, they hadn't had a bye week that was before week 10 since 2019.
After week 10?
Yes, after week 10 since 2019. It's been 6 years since they've had a late bye.
That's crazy.
This is so crucial because if you have any guys that are banged up that you need to get back for that last brutal stretch of the season, like, it's a perfect bye week. We have been clamoring for this. We finally get rewarded with that late bye.
Yeah, even though it's kind of played in the Chargers' favor. I mean, last year, obviously, Justin Herbert got injured week 3, didn't look the same week 4, and they had that there. I think Rashawn Slater was hurt during that week as well last year. So it always has seemed to actually favor them to have that early bye week. But when you're talking about that final 5-game stretch and having a week to potentially get some guys back and rest up, that is going to, I think, pay huge dividends for the Chargers not having a really early bye week again this year. But we have to talk about what the Chargers did to announce what the schedule was. They went Minecraft, and once again, they proved why they're one of the top social media, the top social media team in the entire NFL. And we're going to get into all of the fun nuggets that they had to that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Thank you guys again, as always, for making us your first listen today. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Krabs and Joe Marino as they keep you the most informed NFL fan this offseason on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, we have to get to the actual Chargers video release, which you just sit and wait and you wonder, like, what can they possibly do? Because, I mean, the amount of pressure that is on that specific team, man, is insane to me. And they're expecting... Everyone has such high expectations. I know I've been there before where it's like you go in to see a really good movie, but everyone's hyping it up so much that it just doesn't quite hit the same. I go into every single season when the schedule releases thinking, man, I hope I don't have too high of expectations for the Chargers and what they're going to do for the schedule release. And in my opinion, man, they proved again why they're the best in the NFL. I thought they absolutely crushed it with their Minecraft release video. I thought it was hilarious.
Man, my goodness, this is so funny. I just can't believe that they keep doing this. It's kind of like the scouts that work all year to get ready for the draft. And, they have their Super Bowl, which is the draft, right?
Yeah.
This is the social media team's Super Bowl. This is something that they have been working on all season, all year, trying to perfect and get right and get all of those amazing kind of Easter eggs and nuggets in there. It's so funny, so hilarious. But yeah, the pressure has to be unbelievable to have to be able to keep upping their game year after year and after year. And by golly, they really found a way to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, it already has been wondering, like, what can they possibly do next year, right?
It's got to be GTA, right? Has to.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it feels like it has to be. I mean, if it's out in time, right? I don't even know if it'll be out by that time. Yeah, I mean, I think it's May 2026, so we'll see. But I mean, let's also shout out the Pop-Tart post as well. Went with the Pop-Tarts again. That's always good. The best one, obviously, being the Raiders, being black mold flavored Pop-Tarts, which I thought was really funny. But the thing that drives me insane is the people in the comments that are like, we should be spending our time trying to win playoff games and not worrying about social media. Do you want a not funny social media team? Would you rather the Chargers had a bad social media team? I always see that comment.
And how does it have any bearing on the play on the football field? It doesn't at all. Come on,
totally different people doing these things, but just appreciate it because man,
come on.
I've seen some really bad schedule releases. I haven't seen all of them yet. I don't know if the Chargers is the best one. But that year after year, they're going to hit, and they're going to hit at a really, really high percentage, and they're going to be up there every single year as one of the best. But, David, when you're talking about your favorite Easter eggs, because shout out Athir, right? Every team got roasted. Every team on the schedule got a little something for the Chargers. Which ones did you like the most?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, hurting all of the donkeys at the Donkey Ranch field. That was pretty funny, man. Obviously, the Broncos and making fun of that fact. Also, the quote from Jameis Winston that you can't say the sky is the limit when there's people on the moon poster that was on the wall was pretty hilarious. Also, the ghost of Saquon
the Giants
haunting the Giants, which was absolutely fantastic. I really, really loved that. Also, for the Eagles save our tush push and Jason Kelsey's cell phone repair, making fun of the fact that he grabbed some dude's phone and smashed it, which was absolutely hilarious. I mean, and then I think last but not least, one of my favorite ones is the Chargers making fun of the combine fight, if you will, of Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz.
Yeah, that the fight inside of the Starbucks between two of the top NFL news breakers that are out there was super funny. Even the credits are funny, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing with the Chargers is like we won't even be able to get to a quarter of the Easter eggs that are in this today just because there's so many and it's so dense, and that is what sets them apart is the attention to detail. If you haven't seen it, you have to watch it, and I mean you spend your time refreshing it to make sure you see it as soon as it comes out. But also in those credits, you had Minecraft Jim Harbaugh beating up Justin Herbert before a game, as he is one to do. You also had Tyreek Stevenson from the Bears last year dancing in the end zone before he ended up giving up a Hail Mary in that game, which was just insane. But I also thought, I mean, that the Raiders are going to get it the worst every single time, right? The Raiders, it's always FTR forever. And the Raiders got it pretty bad in this one. I mean, they had the AFC West estates where it's just mansion, Raiders, straw hut that just looks like terrible. And then,
third world. Yeah.
Later on in the episode or the video, you end up seeing a little QR code that just barely pops up. It flashes and then it's like a shirtless picture of Pete Carrol and then a Roomba because their stadium looks like a Roomba. And then you also get the Tom Brady fumble, all of those things. But of course, every fan, is going to be like, all right, well, what is that? And if you stop it and you click on that QR code, it takes you to the Chargers website. And it's like, oh, this link isn't found. Oh, actually, sorry, try again. Keep going. And it's just layer after layer after layer until you get what the Chargers did to the Raiders last year twice, David, which was taking the L, which I thought, of course, it's FTR forever.
Oh man, it's so funny that they really pour into the Chargers and Raiders matchups.
Oh,
they really want to make sure that they stick that knife in just a little bit deeper with every single jab that they take. And I love it. I really couldn't, want for anything more than that. Keep that rivalry alive, continue to bury the Raiders in everything that you do.
Absolutely. And just, a couple more. The Colts got it pretty bad because it shows them at the Indianapolis 500 race cars that are driven by Colts players. And then, of course, Anthony Richardson starts running out of gas, which, is talking
going
about
to the
last
Pat
year.
McAfee suites. Yeah.
Yeah, where he's tapping his helmet to come out of a game, which you've never seen a quarterback do in NFL history.
He did it
until
though.
then.
Yeah.
And because of how bad all of that was, Pat McAfee evacuated his season tickets in the suite, and then you just have an empty Pat McAfee suite in that stadium, which I thought was funny. The Steelers, right? Two different carts in a mine somewhere going together. One is rebuild, one is contend. They both meet up together because they can't decide which one of those they always want to be. They meet up at 9 and 8, and they end up going off of a cliff because it's a dead end there. So
I like the Chiefs Kingdom one too, getting a visit from the Ender Eagle, just ending the dynasty that they were trying to create. I thought that was pretty funny too.
Yeah, so you have an army of Chief players, right, that are going to take on the final boss, which is the Ender Eagle, and then of course they're all getting hyped up. They start charging him, a bunch of them at once, and then the giant eagle just takes all of them out in one fell swoop. But nobody is safe in this. I mean, you also talk about the Jaguars. You have the coach Liam Cohen doing the terrible Duval that he let out. But it's just, so funny that I'll have to go back and watch it 2 or 3 more times. Is there anything else from it that you wanted to touch on before we go? We got to a lot of them.
Yeah, just the last one. The best record among wild card teams banners for the Vikings. I thought that was pretty hilarious too, man. Because obviously, you crush it, go 14-3 in the regular season, and then you just get destroyed in the playoffs and pretty much just wipe away all the good work that you did during the season.
Yeah, also you have to take some shots at the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah.
And it shows you the Cowboys stadium, and the whole thing's just lit up with glare because you have the most expensive stadium in the NFL.
By a lot.
No one can see because you have one kind of Death Star like fatal flaw to your stadium design that just, you know, in a multi-billion-dollar stadium ends up being kind of just like, well, get a shade. You know what I mean? Get some blinds there. What are we doing here if it's affecting the game? But so many good ones. I mean, that was really just too many to count. But that was, I mean, to me, kind of the cream of the crop of this schedule release. And you knew it was going to be great. And year after year after year, they come out and continue to just really, really bring it. I mean, there's so many good ones. I mean, they crushed Will Levis as well with the Titans just because there's so many Will Levis memes. I'm sad we won't get as many Will Levis moments or him at least facing off against the Chargers anymore because that was pretty much a guaranteed win. But
Yeah.
props, kudos to Megan and the social media team and everyone that was involved in just making it once again, you know, the best in the NFL, or one of them at the very least. But I'll always look forward to it. You can always kind of expect greatness from them. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is tomorrow is Fan Mail Friday, so you guys can tell us what you want to talk about by hitting us up at Locked On LAC and giving us your question there, or on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, or our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also hit us up in the YouTube comments and also tell us which one of the roasts was your favorite, because I mean, I know there's some that we just forgot about just because there was so many to get to from that, but let us know what your favorites were, and also give us a Fan Mail Friday question if you have one, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question there. Things are really ramping up. You know, it is your team every day, so we'll be here throughout the rest of the offseason with all of the latest news, and as things start to heat up with OTAs, mandatory minicamps, and all the stuff that we have ahead. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Fan Mail Friday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.